Let's bring in Michael Gottlieb, see what he thinks, criminal defense attorney in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The defense making a big deal, as they should, about this, the big man, the weight, 300 pounds. How does Melody move him? What did you think of that demonstration in the close to hammer home this point that that's reasonable doubt in and itself?
You know, I kind of liked it, Ted, because a lot of our communication obviously is verbal, what we're saying, but the nonverbal communication can really have an impact with the jury. And the way the lawyer was there dragging that, and it shows that, you know, he's out of breath, and it was a little too much for him to carry. You know, as criminal defense attorneys, what we want to do is create a reasonable doubt. So there might be a juror saying, yeah, you know, I don't think she could have done that. I certainly don't think it was drama over the top. I think it was appropriate for the court. It brings home a point, and he sewed it up with a kind of a neat little saying that this is the heaviest of doubt. So I kind of like it. I think it was effective.
The fact that the murder weapon has never been located as well, and you add the just huge gap of how did she pull this off in terms of the size of the body, there seems to be a lot to go with in terms of the reasonable doubt argument. Do you agree? What do you think this jury is likely sort of honing in on?
So, you know, that's really difficult to say what they're honing in on. I will tell you, I think one of the most prominent pieces of evidence is obviously that there is a bullet lodged in the decedent's ribcage. So obviously he didn't fall over, didn't fall into the fire, didn't happen on his own. So there has to have been some form of premeditation. The question is, who did it? And here, the government never has to prove motive. They never have to prove why somebody did something. But here's a couple, they weren't happy. They were trying to get divorced in 2018, then it didn't go through. The husband is giving away the family riches to the adult children. She's being deprived of that money. She wants that money. She's got a boyfriend, lies about the boyfriend. So I think all that adds up to her motive, her intent, and her plan to get rid of her husband of 39 years, and probably a conviction.
The brothers, you had Scott Ferris, who the defense pointed their fingers, multiple fingers. I mean, this was dramatic. You've got this kid in the courtroom, and they keep referring to him in their closings. He's the guy that did it. And it forces the jury to make a decision, does it not? And can that be risky if at the end of the day I'm a juror and I'm like, you know, I don't think Scott did it, so she must have? Or does it give them another out? Because let's face it, if she didn't do it, who else? What was your take on the aggressive pointing of the finger towards Scott?
So if Scott did it, she did it. She did it with him. She got him to do it. That's a principle. Anybody is a principle if they aid, assist, entice, or encourage another in the commission of a crime. So if Scott did it for his sister, blood's thicker than water, it goes into that whole motive, intent, opportunity, planning that the state was sort of sowing in their closing argument. So I don't think it hurts to sit there and blame him. They don't have enough evidence maybe to charge him, or, you know, maybe the defense is trying to put it onto somebody else, but she's still a conspirator with him. He didn't do it for himself. Scott didn't do it for himself. There's no reason for him to do it. He did it for his sister.
Well, the defense argues that he did do it for himself because he was a jobless moocher, and Dad was getting mad at him because he kept stealing money from him, and he whacked him at the fire pit or down in the basement and pulled him to the fire pit. The other brother, Chris Ferris, he testified, and on cross, this was a moment that the defense tried to use to their advantage, bringing up the fact that, hey, she, Melody, invited the grandkids to the house while Gary is on the burn pile. If she killed him, do you really think the mother who loved these grandkids would ever in a million years want those grandkids around this atmosphere? And this is what Chris had to say about that.
Your mom called. What'd she say?
Like I said before, she said, hey, does Addie still want to come have the sleepover at the farm?
Don't you think it's a little absurd to think that if your mother gruesomely killed your father and burned him on a burn pile, that she would invite your daughter up to her house? Her granddaughter, whom she loved more than anything.
I think it's sick and twisted.
So you think, is that what you think?
Yeah.
That a great moment for the state there, because that was one of those moments where, the defense throws it out there, and it is risky. You always say, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, and boy, he threw that right back at him and made Grandma now look like Mommy Dearest. Moments like that can make a difference, can they not?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's a pretty poignant moment when you have a family member sitting there and condemning and saying that that's sick and twisted. And it is. And that's the mind of a person that commits a murder and murders their husband of 39 years. So I think that was a mistake for the defense to ask that question. They should have known that was a hostile witness. They should have known an answer like that was coming. He feels that his daughter, who was the granddaughter, would or could or should have been harmed by being invited and entered into, the calculus of having killed her husband. And so it is sick and it is twisted, and that's going to ring a very loud bell with a number of jurors.
Yeah, it was an honest response. That anger that you referred to really did come out. The other big part of this case for the state and for the defense is Rusty, the boyfriend, Rusty. She has this boyfriend. She lies about it at the very beginning. People lie about that type of stuff early on in investigations all the time because they're still wanting to project their image, not realizing what's coming. But Rusty came into this picture because he contacted detectives 3 weeks after Gary's murder and says, hey, you guys got to hear this. She told me at 2:30 in the morning that Gary was on the burn pile before Gary was even missing, and boom, this is why she's at the defense table, because of Rusty coming forward. Let's listen to that. Michael, Rusty seemed very convincing on both. In that audio, he seemed very convincing, and then on the stand, very convincing. What do you do with that if you're a jury? The defense wants you to just don't think about Rusty. But let's face it, that's very compelling for him to contact authorities and say, she said Gary's on the burn pile before Gary's even missing.
Yeah, that really doesn't add up, because if I recall, the two of them were, when she was arrested, she was in Tennessee with him. So it doesn't make sense, that they would, whether they were uncharacterized that as running away together or taking a vacation together, but they're together after, the murder of her husband or death of her husband. And then her paramour turns on her and says, hey, by the way, she told me a really, incriminating fact that her husband was on the burn pile, and he appreciates it as incriminating and tells that to the police and says, don't tell me anything more. I don't want to hear anything more. So you have to scratch your head and say, why is he changing his story now? And despite the fact that he's vouching for himself as an honest person who doesn't say things, doesn't tell lies under the oath, he did it before then. So he either lied then or he's lying now. Not really a credible witness today, in my opinion.
3 hours now. We're just getting to that point in jury deliberations. This is a 3-week trial. There's a lot here. How long would you say, and if you in your experience as a defense attorney, when do you start to get anxious or get excited that they're really having trouble from a defense standpoint? Because we're way too early now. But at what point is it getting to be a lot? At the end of the day today, or your thoughts?
So you get anxious the second the jury goes out. You're nervous, right away. But there is no litmus test for how long a jury can be out, how long a jury can deliberate. 3 hours is certainly respectable. What we as in the defense bar call, respectable. We got them thinking. But you never know. Is it one person fighting the whole panel? So one person's holding out for not guilty and they're fighting the rest of the veneer, or is it a 6-6 split? Is it where are they? So it's really hard to tell what they're fighting over. And in fact, they could be fighting over murder in the first degree, murder in the second degree. It's never as clear as guilty, not guilty. They could be looking at a lesser included offense. So it's hard to tell. What this shows me, 3 hours, is both sides did a good job. The prosecution presented their case. The defense did a good job, perhaps, of showing or creating where there's reasonable doubt. And the jury is doing what they should do, which is deliberating over the facts of the case.
Yeah, and they are doing that. They'll continue to do that. And our team is there waiting for any word, any question. Yesterday, there was one question. They only deliberated for about an hour, and they got some evidence in, and then they wanted to go home. The jury's in charge.